The cathedral bells tolled with majestic grandeur, their echo cascading across the city like a blessing. Inside, the vaulted ceiling glimmered with golden chandeliers, casting warm light on rows of well-dressed guests. Everyone had gathered to witness what the newspapers had already called the wedding of the year. Clara Williams stood at the center of it all, her porcelain skin glowing beneath layers of silk and lace. Her gown was hand-stitched in Paris, her veil studded with crystals that caught every shimmer of light. She was breathtaking, like a jewel meant to be displayed, not worn. Her lips curved into a smile, one that seemed sweet to the crowd, but inside, it was laced with victory. She had done it. She had secured Adrian Montgomery, the heir to the Montgomery estate, a man of generational wealth and impeccable social standing. Love, that had never been part of her calculations. Clara loved luxury. She loved the idea of waking each morning in a penthouse above the city, draped in diamonds, living a life others could only envy. And Adrian was the perfect ticket. Adrian, by contrast, stood in his tailored suit, eyes fixed on her as though she were a miracle he did not deserve. His chest swelled with pride. For years, he had kept a guarded heart, fearing women wanted his money more than his soul. But Clara had slipped through his defenses with her laughter, her beauty, and her practiced words of devotion. As the reception unfolded in a grand ballroom, Adrian's friends toasted his good fortune. Clara danced gracefully, her gown sweeping across marble floors, her diamonds catching every flicker of light. She moved like a woman in a dream, but her eyes betrayed something else, an ever-present hunger. She saw not Adrian, but the empire that came with his name. Adrian, though blinded by her beauty, sensed something. It was faint, like a shadow trailing behind a candle's glow, a whisper of doubt. He had heard it from old friends, from cautious family members. Be careful, Adrian. She's not here for love. But he pushed it aside. Clara's touch was warm, her smile intoxicating. He convinced himself that love had simply found him late, but in its purest form. Later that night, in the privacy of their limousine, Clara leaned her head against the window. The city skyline glittered with promise, and she thought not of her husband beside her, but of the life she now controlled. Adrian slipped his arm around her, whispering, "To forever, my love." She turned, kissed his cheek, and whispered back, "Forever," though in her heart, she knew forever had a price. And so began their marriage. Adrian, in blind devotion, and Clara, in quiet ambition. Neither of them knew then that their vows would be tested in a way that would strip away all illusions and expose the truth of what lay beneath. The weeks after the wedding were filled with opulence. Clara settled into the Montgomery penthouse, a sprawling glass tower that overlooked the city. The place glittered with chandeliers, velvet drapes, and art worth more than most people's lives. She filled her days with shopping, spa visits, and long lunches with friends who adored her for the lifestyle she now embodied. Adrian, on the other hand, immersed himself in work. His family's empire spanned banking, technology, and real estate. Meetings consumed his mornings, calls stretched into the evenings. Yet he always carved out time to sit across from Clara at dinner, drinking in her beauty as though it were sustenance. But the whispers came early. It began with a friend, David, a longtime confidant who had stood beside Adrian through years of boardroom wars. One night, over brandy in Adrian's private study, David leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Adrian," he said, "I hesitate to bring this up, but people are talking about Clara." Adrian frowned. Talking about what? David swirled the amber liquid in his glass. They've seen her. At the Ritz Cafe. At La Vienne. Always with the same man. Young, sharp-dressed. Too close, too often. The words cut deeper than Adrian expected. He wanted to laugh it off, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. He remembered small things. Clara stepping away to answer hushed phone calls, her eyes flickering when he asked simple questions, the way she seemed more animated with her friends than she ever was with him. Still, Adrian dismissed it. She's adjusting to the life. She deserves her space. David's expression was heavy with concern. I know you love her, but love should never blind you. The next day, the whispers grew louder. Anonymous messages appeared on his phone. Your wife isn't who you think she is. She has another man. Photos followed. Blurry shots of Clara in sunglasses, leaning too close to someone across a cafe table, a hand brushing against hers. Adrian's chest tightened as he studied them. The images weren't damning. No kisses, no embraces, but they carried an intimacy that pierced him nonetheless. At dinner, he tried to watch her more closely. Clara laughed at some stories she told about a friend's mishap at a boutique. Her laughter was bright, rehearsed, and yet shallow. Adrian's fork clinked against his plate as he murmured, You seem busy these days. Clara's eyes flicked up, quick and sharp. Just keeping myself entertained while you're at work. Should I sit at home twiddling my thumbs? Her tone was light, but Adrian caught the edge in it. He forced a smile. Of course not. The following evening, he drove home earlier than usual. He wanted to surprise her, to reassure himself that the rumors were false. Instead, he found the penthouse empty, Clara's phone abandoned on the counter. A text flashed across the screen before he could look away. Tomorrow, same place. I miss you. Adrian's hands trembled. He sat in silence, the city lights casting broken shadows across the marble floor. The whispers were no longer whispers. They were truth clawing at the edges of his world. He poured himself a drink, staring at the amber ripples in his glass. The man he had always been, decisive, ruthless in business, felt suddenly powerless. How do you confront the woman you love? How do you expose her without destroying yourself? A plan began to form. A cold, calculated plan. If Clara had married him for wealth, then he would strip away the one thing she wanted most. He would test her, not with questions, not with accusations, but with a reality she could not fake. Adrian would show her what life looked like when the luxury vanished. And in that crucible, he would discover the truth about her heart. He set the glass down and whispered to the empty room. If you don't love me for me, Clara, then you'll have nothing. The decision was made. The test would begin. The Montgomery penthouse was the very image of Clara's dream. From its glass walls, the city lay sprawled like a jeweled carpet, endless lights flickering against the night. Golden chandeliers poured warmth into every corner. Velvet drapes hung heavy as though guarding secrets, and priceless art pieces stared silently down at her. Clara had grown comfortable in her new throne. She spent her mornings in silk robes, sipping champagne, her afternoons in designer boutiques, and her evenings draped across the velvet sofa with her phone in hand. To outsiders, she was the picture of elegance, but inside Adrian's mind, the whispers of betrayal grew heavier by the day. Adrian watched from the shadows of his world. He didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, he studied. He noticed the way her smile dimmed when she spoke to him, the way her eyes lit brighter at every message from the unknown caller. His heart ached, but his resolve sharpened. If Clara had married him for love, She would endure hardship with him. If she had married him for wealth, then she would reveal herself once the wealth was stripped away. And so, Adrian devised his plan. One night, while Clara slept soundly beside him, Adrian sat at his desk in the study. The lamplight glowed across his face, revealing determination carved into every line. He made the necessary calls, quiet instructions to his doctor, his lawyer, his most trusted aides. The stage would be set. The next morning, it began. Adrian left for work as usual, but by noon, news spread across the city. Adrian Montgomery had been in a terrible accident. His car, they said, had collided on the expressway. He survived, but barely. When Clara arrived at the hospital, she found him in a wheelchair, his legs bound, his movements stiff, his expression weakened. Her gasp was genuine. "Adrian, my God, what happened?" He offered a weak smile. "It seems I'll be confined like this for a long time." Clara's arms wrapped around him, but Adrian felt no warmth in her embrace. Her touch was light, hesitant, like one forced into performance. He said nothing. The test had begun. Weeks passed. Adrian returned home. In his wheelchair, every step of the deception carefully arranged with his doctor's complicity. He could walk perfectly well in secret, but in front of Clara, he dragged himself through the house, fumbling with doors, struggling up ramps, relying on her for care. At first, Clara played her part. She smiled, fluffed his pillows, and called the nurses with a show of concern. But Adrian saw the cracks forming. Her sighs grew heavier. Her laughter on the phone returned. Her late-night outings became harder to explain. And in the quiet of his study, Adrian kept notes. Every time she slipped, he documented it. Every late return, every call she dismissed, every sigh of disgust when she thought he wasn't listening. In the stillness of one sleepless night, as rain tapped against the windows, Adrian whispered to himself, "Clara, your love will be tested. And when the truth comes, it will break us both." The first few weeks after Adrian's accident passed in silence heavy enough to crush even the strongest walls of the penthouse. Clara moved through the house like an actress bound to a role she had not chosen. By day, she played the part of the dutiful wife, arranging Adrian's pillows, calling the nurse, smiling when visitors came. But once the doors closed and no one was watching, her mask began to slip. Adrian noticed it in the little things. The way her sighs grew sharper as she wheeled him to the dining table. The flick of her eyes toward the clock whenever he asked for water. The absence of tenderness in her touch, as though caring for him were a task she resented, not an act of love. One night, Adrian dropped a book from his lap, testing her patience. Clara, who had been scrolling her phone, looked up with thinly veiled annoyance. "Clara," he said softly, "could you please pick that up for me?" Her jaw clenched. Slowly, she bent, retrieved the book, and placed it back in his hands. "You should be more careful," she muttered, her voice stripped of warmth. Adrian gave a weary nod, concealing the storm in his heart. This was what he had feared and what he had expected. As days turned into weeks, her visits to him grew shorter. She spent more time out, returning late with excuses laced in perfume and laughter. When Adrian asked where she had been, she waved him off. "Just with friends. You know I can't sit in this penthouse all day." But Adrian did know. He knew she was slipping away, piece by piece, into the arms of another. And still, he remained silent, his body playing crippled even as his mind sharpened like a blade. The penthouse became a prison for both of them. Adrian chained by his ruse, Clara chained by her greed. One evening, as rain lashed against the glass walls, Adrian sat in his wheelchair by the window, staring at the lightning tearing through the sky. Behind him, Clara spoke on the phone, her voice hushed but urgent. Yes, yes, I'll see you tomorrow. He won't suspect a thing. Adrian's reflection in the glass caught the truth he had already known. He whispered to himself, so this is love, Clara? Only when it is easy. That night, while she slept in the guest room, claiming she needed space, Adrian wheeled himself into his study. With his hands trembling but determined, he wrote in his journal, "She has failed, not just as a wife, but as a partner, as a soul I thought I could trust. Tomorrow, I will begin preparing for the reveal. Let her betrayal be uncovered not in whispers, but in truth so loud it will destroy her mask forever." The plan was no longer just a test. It was a reckoning. The penthouse had begun to feel colder, not because of the sweeping glass walls or the city's winter air, but because of the silence that now lived between Adrian and Clara. Their conversations had grown shallow. Polite exchanges at breakfast, clipped remarks at dinner, and long stretches of silence that neither dared to break. Clara had perfected the art of distraction. Whenever Adrian questioned her whereabouts, her answers came rehearsed, smooth, yet hollow. Out with friends. Just a shopping trip. You wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. But Adrian noticed the perfume that wasn't hers lingering on her clothes. He noticed the faint smudge of lipstick on her glass that didn't match her shade. And he noticed her growing impatience every time he asked her for help. One evening, Clara entered the penthouse late, the clock nearing midnight. She walked quickly, heels clicking on the marble, her hair slightly undone. Adrian, waiting in the living room, spoke softly. "You're late." Clara paused, irritation flashing across her face before she smoothed it away with a brittle smile. "I told you, dinner with the girls." Adrian's gaze held hers, steady and unreadable. "Which girls?" Her mouth opened, then closed. "Does it matter?" she said finally, brushing past him. It mattered. It mattered more than anything. Later that night, Adrian sat alone in his study, his journal open before him. The lamplight spilled across his stern features as he wrote. "She is slipping. The mask she wears is cracking, and I see her for what she truly is. My heart still hopes, foolishly, that I am wrong, but every sign tells me I am not." Meanwhile, Clara lay in the guest room, her phone glowing in the dark. A message lit the screen. "I wish you were here. Tomorrow, same time." Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. She typed quickly, "Yes, tomorrow." The divide between husband and wife widened that night, not with words, but with silence too loud to ignore. And though Adrian still played the role of the crippled husband, inside, his resolve hardened. The day of truth was drawing closer. Adrian's doubts had hardened into near certainty. The whispers, the late nights, the brittle smiles. Everything pointed toward a truth he dreaded to confirm. And yet, he needed undeniable proof. One evening, as Clara prepared to leave the penthouse again, she smoothed her hair in the mirror. "Don't wait up," she said lightly. Adrian's voice was steady, but his eyes were sharp. "Clara, where are you going tonight?" Her smile was too quick. "Dinner. Friends." He nodded, wheeling himself closer. "I'd like to meet them sometime." She froze for just a fraction of a second before turning away. Another night, when the elevator doors closed behind her, Adrian dialed a private investigator. "Follow her," he ordered. "I want everything. Photos, dates, times." The next morning, a manila envelope lay on his desk. Inside were photographs of Clara, laughing too freely with a younger man at La Vienne Cafe, her hand brushing his across the table, her face glowing in a way it never did for Adrian anymore. His chest tightened as he stared at the images. The truth was no longer suspicion, it was fact, and the fact cut deeper than any blade. Adrian said nothing to Clara that night. When she returned, flushed with false laughter, he simply watched her walk in. She met his gaze, searching, perhaps sensing something had changed, but he only offered a tight smile. Silence became his weapon. He withdrew warmth, speaking less, observing more. Clara mistook it for resignation, believing his accident had broken his spirit. But inside, Adrian's resolve sharpened. He would not confront her with accusations. He would expose her with truth. Weeks passed, the tension unbearable. Clara's patience thinned. She snapped at the smallest requests, rolling her eyes when Adrian asked for water, sighing when he needed help. One evening, her voice broke like glass. "Do you expect me to waste my life taking care of you like this?" Adrian's silence was colder than anger. "Isn't that what love is, Clara? Standing by when it matters most." Her eyes flashed, but she said nothing more. The truth was seeping out, whether she wanted it or not. Adrian met again with his lawyer. Quietly, discreetly, he prepared the papers: divorce, asset protection, exposure. At night, in the privacy of his study, he whispered to himself, "The mask is nearly gone. Soon, the world will see her truth." One evening, Adrian invited Clara to dinner at the penthouse. Candles, wine, music, everything staged. She raised an eyebrow at the effort, but she indulged, dressed in silk. As they ate, Adrian slid a photograph across the table. Clara, with the younger man, laughing in the cafe. Her fork froze. "Where did you?" "I know everything, Clara," Adrian said quietly. "And soon, so will everyone else." Clara tried to deny, then to twist. "He's just a friend. You've been imagining things. You've been paranoid since the accident." Adrian's gaze was steady, his voice colder than ice. "Enough. No more lies." She faltered, the weight of his certainty crushing her defenses. Adrian pushed back his wheelchair and, slowly, deliberately, stood. Clara's gasp filled the room. You can walk." Adrian stepped toward her, each movement controlled, his voice thunderous in its calm. "The accident was a lie, Clara. A test, to see if you truly loved me." Her knees weakened, the truth crushing her. Adrian laid out the photographs, the texts, the evidence. Clara stammered, pleaded, wept. "Please, Adrian. I made mistakes, but I love you. Don't throw this away." But Adrian's voice was final. Love built on lies is no love at all. Days later, Clara packed her things. The penthouse felt colder without her, but cleaner, freer. She left with nothing. Adrian's lawyers insured every account. Every asset remained in his name. For Clara, the glamorous world she craved crumbled overnight. Weeks later, Adrian stood on the same balcony, cities stretching endlessly before him. The storm was over. He was not broken. He had been tested and emerged stronger. And though betrayal cut deep, it also freed him from a love that had never been real. In time, he would find someone true. For now, he breathed in the cool air, whispering, "Better alone than chained to the city lights shimmered like hope reborn."